On behalf of the entire board, my name is Chris Brady. I'm the chairperson. I just want to invite and say welcome and thank you for coming to District 7. This is an example of some of the meetings that we do where we get out in the community. This is the effort, or the idea behind this is to have the community come into our schools and see some of the fantastic things that our students are doing every single day, and also seeing what our incredible teaching staff is doing to help educate our children in our community's future. With that, we're going to go ahead and go through our agenda. I will tell you that prior to this meeting, the board conducted a work session regarding the academies of Louisville, and no action was taken. I also want to say thank you to all the high schools that came out and all the high school students that came out for that Academies of Louisville demonstration. I know that I found that very renewing. I think is, that's how I felt. Really great examples of project-based learning, deeper learning that are going on every day in our schools. And I also want to thank Christy Rogers for throwing that together, and her team, because I know it wasn't just a one-person effort, it was a team effort. This was something that the superintendent, Vice Chair Wilner, and myself had kind of discussed a little over a week ago, and so this was in some ways almost last minute. So again, I want to say thank you for everyone for putting that together. We're going to continue on our agenda, and our first item on our agenda is our traditional moment of silence. So if you would, please join us at this time. Thank you. At this time, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by District 7 elementary school students that are right up here in the front row. So, thank you. And the flag is behind you. Our next item on our agenda is our vision statement. Our vision statement will be read by District 7 middle school students. We have two middle schools within District 7, Ramsey Middle School and Carruthers Middle School. And students, whenever you're ready.
All Jefferson County public school students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, responsible citizens of our diverse, shared world.
Thank you very much. So, as I said, I wanted to extend some greetings just from personally from myself and kind of give you a little bit of an overview of District 7. I have a little bit of a keynote presentation here, so I will try to keep this a little interesting. District 7, as you may realize, takes up the southeast corner of Jefferson County. It is the largest district as far as size within the county. And within District 7, we have 15 schools. These schools have a student population, or within District 7, about 109,000 people reside, and of that, the median household income is about $87,400. Our educational attainment is about 23% have graduated high school or have a GED, 30% have some college, and 42% have a bachelor's degree or higher. This is of the population that is 25 years old or plus within JCP or within District 7. Students in District 7, we have 15,170 school-age children that reside within the district. Of that, 65% choose to attend a JCPS school. 14% is what those 65% make up the total of our student population, as 14%. And of that, 88% of our students in District 7 graduate high school. Also within District 7, 47% attend a school within the district, and 15% choose to attend a magnet or traditional school. So when you take a look at that within all the different magnet and traditional programs that we have, which is what's represented by this grid, you will see that District 7 is the area in the red highlighted rectangle on your right-hand side. And you'll notice that the items that are in green represents the district for that particular school that has the highest student population for that school. District 7 doesn't have the highest student population for a lot of schools, but we do have the second highest, which is in yellow, for a lot of these schools here. And of that, the one we do have the highest amount of students here is, interestingly, Louisville Male High School. Male High School, as you might notice, is nowhere in District 7. It's located off Preston Highway, which is quite a little ways away from here, but a lot of our parents choose to send their students and their kids to Male High School as well as some of these other schools. This is an example of school choice within JCPS. Some folks may not realize that, but we do have quite a bit of choice within our district. I know transportation ride times are always a issue for some. Understand that within our district, our average ride time for buses within District 7 is a little over 30 minutes, but that's when you include magnet and traditional schools. When you take out those schools, and this is more or less taking away choice, you're going to notice that those ride times actually reduce quite a bit, and we're well under our 30-minute average ride time that we try and shoot for as a district. Within District 7, as I mentioned earlier, there are 15 total schools, 11 of which are elementary schools, and they are led by 11 extraordinary principals. Of those 11 elementary schools, we also have, in addition to that, 2 middle schools, which we just heard from a couple of their students just now, and 2 high schools of J-Town, which is where we are now, obviously, and Fern Creek. Those schools are also led by 4 extraordinary leaders as well. And we want to extend my personal gratitude, and I think on behalf of the board, our appreciation for not just the principals that lead these schools every day, but also their staffs and their teams that educate our kids. Within District 7, over the years, Excel Award winners, we've had quite a few of them actually, almost every year. And I think that we might, maybe not, hopefully maybe, we'll see another Excel Award winner for this coming school year. So fingers crossed on that one. There's lots of great things that happen within District 7. Here's an example. We've had the Secretary of Education come to both of the high schools within the last several years, here at J-Town and at Fern Creek. And we've also had visits from our congressman. This is a visit from a few years back over at Ramsey Middle. In addition to that, you have lots of great things happening that our students are doing, like our cardboard regatta that you will see here at J-Town. I think we heard earlier that we've been doing that for 22, 23 years total. And it's, you make a boat made out of cardboard and make sure it's literally sink or swim. So it's a great event. If you ever have a chance to go out there, you should definitely check it out. But we also have a lot of hands-on experience that we have within our schools, as well as some great, fantastic elementary schools where you see lots of happy children, lots of great learning, and lots of engaged adults and kids, learning together. And you have, kids that really like their principals, as you see here, Dr. Conlon over at Farmer. And you will have everything from, I guess, that first selfie that you take in elementary school to that last selfie you have when you graduate high school. So you have a wealth of experiences within JCPS and especially within District 7. I want to go ahead and extend some special thanks to some folks here. Terry Robinson, who has been putting together these meetings, not just for District 7, but for the board for I guess the last several years now, so we always want to say thank you for that. Dina Dossett, for some of the data that you see here, we appreciate taking the time to run those numbers. Matt Anderson, who, are you still here? Yep, whose wife is expecting any minute now. So congratulations on that. And for taking on the acting principal position here at J-Town. So as if you didn't have enough to worry about with impending fatherhood, now you're in here at J-Town. And also want to say thank you to our communications team as well as our setup team. I know our setup team is always a challenge whenever we take the show on the road. I think this is a great facility to be able to hold these meetings, but I know logistically there's been some challenges that our team has had to overcome. So I want to say thank you to all of them. And finally, I just want to say thank you to you for allowing me the time to sing District 7's praises. This is, I believe, Little Mermaid. That was a show or a presentation or a performance that was done at Stouffer Middle School a few years ago. So, but thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy lives to come here and come into our schools. So thank you, and again, most thank you. So with that, I want to move on into our regular agenda. We do have a welcome and overview from J-Town High School, so I'm going to introduce now our acting principal, Matt Anderson. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here and allowing us this opportunity to show you the fantastic things that are going on in our school. I can tell you I've only been here in the acting role about 7 days, but it's not taken me long to recognize and see the fantastic things that our students, staff, and faculty are doing every day to make this a great place to be. Dr. Polio, welcome back. It's glad to have you. I just want to go over some of our programming here and then let you guys get to it. We currently have 1,100 students enrolled in Jeffersontown High School. Of those, I proudly say we have 870 actively enrolled in one of our current academies that you saw earlier. A quick breakdown of those academies: we have a freshman academy. We have 3 total: a freshman academy. We have a build and design academy that includes the following pathways, which would be a machinist operator, welding maintenance tech, mechanical design, and industrial and mechanical engineering. We also have a business and finance program where we offer e-commerce, marketing, and management and entrepreneurship courses. We also have an outstanding ROTC program led by Major Steinley, and you guys were greeted by those wonderful folk as you came in this morning. We have some great community partnerships with Ford, GE, and Land Tech, and they are very hands-on in our school, working with our students on some really cool project-based learning initiatives. One of those was through our freshman academy, where they led a soda pop marketing campaign, and they ended up winning that for the district. So a little shout out to them. I want to give them some props. And then we also offer a lot of other traditional programming that really make our students, when they leave here, extremely well-rounded in theater. We have an a cappella group in high voltage. We have band, music, orchestra, those types of things that I feel leave our students really prepared and well-rounded for life after J-Town High School, which is what we're shooting for. Moving forward, we're looking to include as many students as possible, hopefully all, in a wall-to-wall academy model, and we are expanding our health sciences program to reflect that. Most importantly, thanks to Chair Brady, we have a new Twitter account, so get out your pens or your phones. It's important for you guys to start following us so you can start seeing all the great things that are happening, and that is at JTownHS. So I'll leave you guys with that. There'll be lots of good things happening here on there tonight and moving forward. So thanks again for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And thanks again for hosting this meeting. At this time, it's time for our recognitions and resolutions. I'll turn it over to Ms. Terry Robinson to introduce this next item. Ms. Robinson.
Dr. Polio, Board Chair Chris Brady, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, tonight we have the pleasure of recognizing and receiving student demonstrations of learning from students in Board District 7. We begin with Jeffersontown High School students Andrew Puckett, Reese Sistrunk, and Keegan Robinson, who came up with the idea to repurpose the school stage area, and will share information about the planning and details that help them ensure the success of implementing the building and design of their project. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
All right, I just want to say thank you for everybody being here at J-Town High School. My name's Andrew Puckett.
My name is Reese Sistrunk.
And I'm Keegan Robinson.
And this is the stage reconstruction project.
Last year, we was approached by our former vice principal, Mr. Gambert. He has given us this project to take an unused area and turn it into a multi-purpose area. The first problem is that we need to find a way to decrease the traffic flow in the cheerleading and concessions areas.
Additionally, we wanted to modernize the viewing area in the gym and just publicize Jeffersontown High School in a fresh and positive manner.
The stage hasn't been used in almost 20 years, and the stage has just been used as storage ever since the auditorium was constructed.
All right, so what you guys are seeing now is a 3D model we designed to really bring in donations for the project. We asked the school board what it would cost, and you guys said it'd be about $120,000. Currently, we've raised $25,000 on our own. This project is going to be really important to us because all the academies are going to benefit from it. The Art Academy is going to take the wood from the stage and use it to make reclaimed wood sculptures and statues. And the Welding Academy is going to take all the metal from underneath the stage and use it to practice on. Also, some different things we learned how to read blueprints. We learned how to set up bank accounts because we had to set up one for the donations. We learned basically just a lot of different things in this, and we used SketchUp to build this in our CAD class. So,
After the remodeling is done, it should decrease the traffic in the high traffic areas as well. The wrestling team will be able to place their mat under the mezzanine to practice every now and again. Additionally, the mezzanine itself can be used for viewing during games or possibly even a weight room with storage on the sides.
all right, and I just want to say a thanks to our teacher sponsors, Jason Stepp, Ashley Drager, Gary Stevens, Matt Nett, Ken Pete, and Greg Bray. We wouldn't have gotten here without them, so just a big round of applause for those guys. They really helped us out.
Pretty cool. Dr. Polio, Board Chair Chris Brady, and an Evaluation Transition Coordinator, Dr. Scott Hooper, please join the students and their teacher, Jason Stepp, and Acting Principal, Matt Anderson. Thank you. Next, we have the honor of introducing to you Jeffersontown Elementary students Amy Inserat, Nicholas Hyatt, Brennan Lowe, Tony McLam, Laya Negade, Peyton O'Reilly, Riley Osborne, Jake Perkins, Jenna Pridemore, Sophia Ritchie, Braden Schilling, and Jameson Surfin, who will share several connections they have recently made between the visual and performing arts and colonial times. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
At Jeffersontown Elementary, history comes alive with the arts. Most recently, we transported back in time to the colonial days with the help of music, artifacts, costumes, and hands-on experiences while playing the role of a colonial child.
We learned to play colonial music, learned traditional dances, acted out daily life, and even created these vibrant art pieces in the colonial style. The arts help us understand history in new and exciting ways. Welcome to our colonial times.
hope you enjoyed your artistic journey back in time to the colonial period.
Thank you for letting Jeffersontown Elementary bring history to life for you tonight.
Dr. Polio, Board Chair Chris Brady, Dr. Scott Hooper, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is teacher Shannon Townsley and Principal Brooke Sheeling. Alex R. Kennedy Elementary School provides its students with engaging educational activities in its science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics lab. Student Aiden Robinson will explain 2 projects that he has completed as a roller coaster designer and as a pinball game designer. Student Sadie Dickinson will talk about the family engagement component through home STEAM challenges. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
At Alex R. Kennedy Elementary, each Friday we have an optional STEAM home challenge. These challenges you can do with your family. Here are some of the challenges. One of the challenge is, what can you do with a paper towel roll? And someone made pumpkins. We also had to use a tin can. How creative. Someone made an owl and someone else made a popcorn machine. Our school also had to try to make an apple with found materials. Cute. Someone made an apple. Also, we had to make something out of Play-Doh. Amazing. One of my friends made Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. Finally, we had to make a book with a story inside. How cool. This student weaved up plastic bags and made straw pages, and the story is cute. This is something fun our school does to help the students' learning. I have won most of these challenges, and it helps me learn and have fun with my family. Most students have a chance to win, and if they don't win, they keep trying because they want to have fun with their families and learn a lot more.
But to go with the STEAM home challenges, we have to learn about STEAM. STEAM is one of the many optional programs. Well, it's not really optional. It's a program we have at our school where we combine science, technology, engineering, art, and math. This class, we do many fun challenges such as building a bridge that can hold the weight of an apple. We do many other things that teach students many life-important skills such as teamwork and creativity, which they will soon use in their day-to-day life. That is all, and that.
Dr. Polio, Board Chair Chris Brady, and Dr. Hooper, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is teacher Aaron Bloomer and Assistant Principal Justin Atkins. Thank you. Cochran Elementary School students first researched how American Indians migrated to and adapted to various environments in North America. And then students were given the option of choosing a region that interested them in which to conduct research in order to gain a deeper understanding. Student Lenny Hernandez and Keelan Long, please come forward to begin your presentation.
Hello, and my name is Keelan. My project is about the Native Americans in the Great Plains. Buffalo and bison were their main resources of many items. For example, they used their tails for fly swatters. They also rode horses to get to places swarmed with animals like bison, buffalo, and caribou. And my school enjoys doing projects like this. I hope you enjoyed.
My project was based on the Southwest region. In this region, some of the tribes were the Hopi and the Pueblo tribes. Both tribes made adobe homes, also called pueblos. Some natural resources were corn, beans, squash, cotton, and cactus. The Pueblo ate corn, beans, and squash. The Hopi ate corn, beans, squash, turkeys, and fruits. Some crops that both tribes grew were corn, beans, squash, and sunflower seeds. I really enjoyed researching about this region and making the project. Thank you.
Dr. Polio, Board Chair Chris Brady, and Dr. Hooper, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is Principal Jason Hobbs. Thank you, students. Wilt Elementary School students, Sophia Gillick and Skylar Brown, will talk about how they use Ancestry Classroom, a web-based resource to build their family trees, and will also share the connection between this project and the school's Student Technology Leadership Program. Students, please come forward to begin your presentation.
Where did you come from? Where did I come from? This year at Will Elementary, our Student Technology Leadership Program is working on building our personal family trees with Ancestry websites. We are using Ancestry Classroom as well as FamilySearch.org to do research into how our ancestors played a role in American history. We are starting to see history come to life. The stories in our history books are not just boring stories, but events that include our family members. I have learned that my distant sixth great-grandfather was a patriot in Maryland. During the American Revolution, British soldiers plundered his property and stole many valuable items from him, as well as burned down several buildings. This is coming to life in front of my eyes since we have been learning about the 13 colonies in class. When we started talking about the Maryland colony, I got excited because I know my family and American roots are from that area.
Through this project, we have had to act like detectives. We are going through a multitude of sources to determine our ancestors. My family name is Gillick, and we are from the Chicago, Illinois area. I discovered Gillick is a very common name in Chicago, making it difficult for me to determine which ones are related to my family. But as a detective and with the help of our STLP leader, Ms. Walker, I will continue to use the Ancestry Classroom websites to search census records, birth certificates, and newspaper articles and other tools to determine my roots. Again, this resource is now available to all students and staff in JCPS through a grant with Ancestry.com. This grant also includes access to other websites that provide a multitude of primary sources, including newspapers and military records.
Please make sure you take the time to bring your past to life and let us know how we can help.
Dr. Polio Board Chair Chris Brady and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Paige Hartstern, please come forward to thank the students for their presentation. Joining in the recognition is Principal Ben Pinnick. Thank you, students. I also like to ask District 7 parents and families to stand to be recognized.
Parents.
Please join me in viewing a video presentation of District 7 schools.
One of the things that makes Alex Kennedy unique is our STEAM program. Deeper learning to its best happens in our STEAM lab that is a collaboration with the classroom teacher touching on the aspects of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics.
Part of the Bates Scholar Pledge we recite every morning is we are Bates Scholars. Bates Scholars have the courage to learn, achieve, win, and succeed.
Our vision here at Cochran Elementary is for each person in our community to be passionate, be engaged, and be the best version of ourselves.
And welcome to Farmer Elementary.
Oh, the teachers are awesome. They're like, woo, they're out of the zone. I mean, you can wear costumes, they help you read. There's nothing stopping them.
One of the things that I'm very proud of here at Fern Creek Elementary is that we are a very diverse population. We have over 100 students that are considered English language learners.
At J-Town Elementary, one of the ways that we prepare our students for the next step, middle school, high school, and beyond that to be college and career ready is we make sure that we incorporate technology as much as possible.
We are Stouffer Elementary and we are JCPS. We have a well-rounded education for our students where they can take things such as Latin, Mandarin Chinese, technology, visual and performing arts.
I like it here at Telly because it's a big family. We get to draw art, we get to play instruments and music, we get to read books in library. It's just really fun.
At Waterston Elementary, we are family. We are student-centered. We celebrate all of our students' goals and accomplishments daily, as well as provide support for social, emotional, and academic needs.
Here at Wheeler Elementary School, we believe that students learn through hands-on experiences. We have a STEAM lab.
Every day I would look forward to coming to Wilbs because we got our great principal, Mr. Pinnick, lots of reliable staff, teachers who just work their hardest to encourage you to keep going.
As the principal of Carruthers Middle School, my goal every day is to create and maintain an environment that is respectful, compassionate, and student-centered.
The best part about Ramsey is the teachers here. They care about all the kids' futures. They go through all the lesson plans. They make sure we understand it before we actually move on to the next standard we have to complete.
Our mission at Fern Creek High School is to prepare students to become college and career ready. We offer unique programs from advanced placement to Fern Creek's only Ivy Plus Academy that strives to get students accepted into Tier 1 colleges and universities.
So here at J-Town High School, I'm in the Build and Design Academy, and I'm in the engineering pathway. In the engineering program, we build a solar cart.
I think that's really what's cool about the school is the fact that we have teachers who are so loving and so caring of us.
Dr. Polio and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson, and again, thank you for all the hard work of pulling together this meeting here at J-Town, and also, as I mentioned earlier, everybody within the JCPS family to making this a success. At this time, is there a motion to receive the recognitions? Motion made by member Grease, second made by member Kolb. All those in favor? Motion passes. At this time, it is our traditional custom to let all of our students here dismiss for just a little bit. We'll take a short recess, about 5 minutes, and let all of our students go home and get a good night's sleep, and we'll consider, at least I'll consider this your homework. So I don't know if your teachers would, but I will. So, but thank you so much. And those of you who are standing around the on the walls, or if you're in the overflow room, please come on in and grab a seat. So thank you very much. We'll recess here for about 5 minutes.
Something at this school before. I created a robot. Okay. I actually didn't. I don't even know the school.
What is playing grass?
All right, we're going to come back to order.
I'm not free until 10:30 because King got to school, and that was kind of.
We have plenty of seats down here. If you're lined up against the wall, if you wish to take a seat, we have plenty of open seats for you. You don't have to worry about the ones that were reserved for the students, since hopefully most of them have gone home and to do homework. All right, so we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the recommendation for approval of the meeting agenda. However, I do want to make a motion for an amendment. You might notice this evening that we are missing one of our colleagues. Miss Diane Porter is unable to be here today. Unfortunately and tragically, she is unable to be here tonight due to a death in the Porter family. Our hearts and thoughts and our sympathies go out to her and her family and her extended family during this very difficult time. She requested an excused absence for this meeting, so therefore that's going to be a vote. So what I'd like to do is make a motion to amend our agenda to vote for that excused absence right after this particular agenda item. So I will make that motion for that to occur. Is there a second? Second made by Vice Chair Wilner. All those in favor? Motion passes, and we will do that here shortly. Before I move on to that, I would like to ask my colleagues if there are any other discussion or amendments to our meeting agenda that anyone wishes to make. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on from here. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Motion made by Vice Chair Wilner, seconded by Member Horn. All those in favor? Motion passes, and we will move on to our very next agenda item, which I'll consider item 4.B or 4.2, which will be a vote to excuse Member Porter for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion? Motion made by Vice Chair Wilner, seconded by Member Horn. All those in favor? Motion passes, and this her absence is excused. So again, our thoughts and prayers go out to the Porter family. We are now move on to our next item, which is the recommendation for approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. This is the vote to approve the minutes of the November 7th and 8th special meetings. Is there any discussion? Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Member Horn, seconded by Member Kolb. All those in favor? Motion passes. And now we're on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Brady and board members. Thank you for everyone that is here tonight. I wanted to start on a personal note because this is a special trip for me being back here at J-Town High School. 10 and a half years ago, June of 2007, I interviewed here for the principal position in the room right next door to us. Being an assistant principal for 3 years, went home that evening, thought I did well, and was offered the job, and had that feeling laying in bed like, what have I gotten myself into? Thinking I have no idea what I'm doing. 10 years later, surprisingly, I had the same interview and the same feeling when I went home that night. So here I am. Obviously never thought I would be sitting here in this position when I got to J-Town High School. And I did want to bring note to this room that we are sitting in 2007. This room was essentially a storage room. It was built in the early 90s as the addition to the school, and it was used at the time it was built that it was going to be for the industrial park to bring in large equipment into this room for students to work on. And that never manifested itself in that way when the vocational programs moved into J-Town High School. And so essentially the school had no auditorium, and we had this large room at the front of the school that just had a lot of stuff that was kept in here and used every once in a while as an all-purpose room. But I think the mark of the school was at that time, and is still such a great school, that we rallied our alumni, we rallied our parent-teacher association, we rallied the teachers around to say, let's build an auditorium where we can have kids truly display the work that they do each and every day. And within about 12 months, and really a lot of hard work in raising money through faculty, alumni, teachers, students, parents, everybody pitched in together, and we have this auditorium now. So it's very meaningful for me to be sitting back on this stage at J-Town High School. And I just want to comment on the fantastic teachers that I had the opportunity to work with here, the fantastic students, thousands of students in 8 years of being here at J-Town High School, and hundreds of teachers that are fantastic teachers. I see a lot of them sitting in the back of the room that, you know, I learned a lot in my time here, but their support, you know, to my career and where I am now has meant a lot to me. So this will always be a special place for me. Probably the most difficult decision of my career was leaving J-Town High School, but I'll always consider this being home and a place that I always want to be a part of. And walking down the hallway and seeing 8 graduating classes with me sitting in there was very meaningful for me tonight. So very important and powerful for me to be back at J-Town High School. So I want to thank all the teachers that are here. Thank you. As always, I will briefly talk tonight about improving culture and climate, increasing student learning, and improving organizational coherence. Since our last meeting, we've had to work to really develop 2 initiatives that cross over to all 3 of those areas, and those are the most powerful ones that influence all 3. And one that we will talk about greatly tonight is the Louisville Promise Partnership. We've had the opportunity to pass an MOU several months ago. Tonight we'll be bringing back a data sharing agreement with Schoolhouse Partners. Louisville Promise Partnership had the opportunity to travel with the mayor and a team from Louisville across many sectors to Harvard 2 weeks ago for a convening of other cities that are working through this model. And it is one of the most promising partnerships and initiatives that I think this community and this school district will take on in many, many years. And one of the things I learned from other cities is if we are going to be successful as a school district in educating our children, that we have to go beyond just the school district itself and the schools itself and make it a community-wide issue. And that is what Louisville Promise Partnership does. And my entire career, I've focused on things like standards and student outcomes, things like reading and math, and we'll continue to do that. But the power of this partnership is now we are focusing on the needs that we have to meet for kids in order to be successful, and providing as a community wraparound services for our children from the time they are born until they reach the time they are in their career and reach college. So very promising initiative. Schoolhouse Partners, if passed tonight, they're going to take a hard look at everything we do in JCPS, how we spend our money, how we do things, where there are gaps in services, and how we can work with partners like Metro United Way and Louisville Metro government to meet the needs of our kids, and also how every single student will be afforded a scholarship when they graduate from a JCPS high school to move on to at least an associate's degree for free. So it is one of the most promising initiatives that I think this district has seen in many years, and I'm looking forward to the work that can happen. Second of all, I'm very proud of the opening last week of our satellite central office in the California Community Center, which gives us the opportunity to, and we need to continue to do this and expand this in many ways, where we go to parents. We provide services to parents. They don't have to come to us. We need to continue to work on that, engage our community, engage our parents, in order for us to be successful in all 3 of our initiatives. Improving culture and climate, we continue to work with principals every single day on how we can improve and support culture and climate in schools. We are working hard and diligently to tackle issues in individual schools that are well publicized, and we'll continue to do that, but we still have to work on focusing our work on supporting all schools and improving climate and culture systemically across the district. Also, a new initiative, we are bringing back a principal training program that will begin second semester. We've had assistant principals apply for the program. This is going to prepare our bullpen, so to speak, so that we have school leaders who are ready to take on the work of improving culture and climate on their first day of becoming a principal. Those happened in the past. We are bringing those back. Increasing student learning. I think the staff was encouraged, motivated, and inspired today by having 29 different schools present to a team of deeper learning experts throughout our district. And they were presenting their plans on how they are implementing deeper learning and how we can provide financial resources through grants to meet their needs. And what I heard briefly, I was in and out a lot, but we have schools doing fantastic things when it comes to deeper learning, and it was inspirational to see the work that is being done. Sometimes that's not public for us to hear or see, but very inspired by the work that's being done throughout our school district. We hope next year there'll be 129 schools in front of us, and eventually 155 talking about deeper learning. So very excited about that work. And finally, improving organizational coherence. We had 2 new hires in the past week that will bring coherence to our organization. First of all, Cassie Blousey has been hired as the Director of School Choice. We'll begin working immediately on our work as authorizers in charter schools. She comes to us from the Kentucky Department of Education. And Ashley Duncan as our District Diversity Hiring Specialist. We are excited to add her to our team also. She joins us from TARC. So exciting things going on, a lot of work to do, but we're excited about all the momentum that we are gaining in many areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Polio. Next on our agenda is the opportunity for the community to address the board. So persons requesting to address the board regarding action, information, or consent items is now at this point of our agenda. We have 11 speakers that are going to be speaking to us regarding one of our information items, which is the discussion regarding school resource officers in schools. So at this time, let me quickly just remind all speakers about our speaking policy, and I will say that right after the folks that are the 11 speakers that want to address us on SROs, there are another 18 speakers that would like to address us on non-agenda items. Now, I also understand that there's a bit of confusion during the sign-up, that there might be some folks that may have signed up thinking that they needed to sign up if they were presenting earlier, so those folks may not actually be here, and there were some folks that signed up on one thinking that they had to sign up on that one and not the other. So because of the confusion, we're going to go ahead and allow everyone. But before we start with that, let me remind everyone our policy regarding public participation in speakers. In accordance with Board Policy 01.421, the board expects that persons who have signed up to address the board will limit their remarks to the subject that they listed at the time they signed up, that their presentation will not include any defamatory or abusive remarks about the subject, and that they will present their remarks in a manner that is consistent with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Also, in accordance with board policy, the board reserves the right to limit, extend, or terminate discussion on any subject. Speakers before the entire board are not allowed to use props, displays, or any other objects during the presentations. However, informational handouts may be given to the Assistant Secretary to the board, which is to my stage left, for distribution prior to or following the meeting. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board and may not share these minutes with any other speaker. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once, indicating that you will have 30 seconds left to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, a bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. The superintendent will look into the speaker's issues and, if necessary, represent the board in follow-up or recommended action to the board. The board policy concerning public participation in open meetings is available for viewing on our website and at our sign-up sheet. With that being said, we'll move on to the first of our 11 speakers on agenda items, which is again regarding the school resource officers. So Ms. Sue Foster is first up. Ms. Foster, again, you have 3 minutes, and the floor is yours when you're ready.
Good evening, Dr. Polio, Board Chair Brady, and board members. It has been suggested that our schools and district as a whole are not in need of school resource officers and localized police support as means of security for our children and staff members. School safety is a vital tool for students, teachers, support staff, administrators, and parents to concentrate on developing and maintaining an optimal learning environment. In a recent study on school violence and its effects conducted by Syracuse University, the statistics are deafening. Over 160,000 students are absent from school every day in America due to fear of violence in their school. 100,000 students are assaulted every day in American schools. Well over 500 school staff members are threatened with bodily harm by their students, while 200 or more employees are physically assaulted each day. Our school employees, both certified and classified, are taught to deflect and de-escalate the obscenities and threats made toward them on a daily basis. They are passionate about their students and expected by all to provide our students with the tools and guidance needed to become successful adults and community leaders. The removal of security and SROs from our schools will only create a higher level of fear, instability, in an environment that can only prove to be detrimental to the physical and mental health of all students and staff. Throughout life, our generations and generations to come have been and will be faced with situations that are not of our normal daily routines and expectations. We as adults and educators must look beyond the out-of-the-normal situations, maintain our course, and make decisions that support all stakeholders. The situation that took place at this very high school on November 1st was a very unfortunate incident and is being thoroughly investigated by all necessary entities. JCAESP does not desire to be judge or jury as we put our faith in those that have been assigned to that investigation. As president of JCAESP, I must strongly disagree with any notion or suggestion that calls for the removal of those who we depend upon to protect, support, secure, and provide a safe and positive learning environment for the children and staff of JCPS. We ask that this board not be given to knee-jerk reactions, but to allow time for the due process of this investigation to be completed and continue the course of providing safe environments for all members of the JCPS community. We must all work diligently to ensure the safety of our children and staff members. We encourage you to continue to support your certified and classified personnel with the means and tools needed to be successful educators of JCPS students in a safe working environment. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the applause, but I'm going to ask that we keep that to a minimum because we have a lot of speakers tonight. Our next speaker will be Jesus Ibanez. Jesus Ibanez. I'm sorry, Ibanez. Jesus Ibanez. Okay. Our next speaker will be Cassia Heron. Cassia Heron. Cassia Heron. Okay. Tyler Morrell. Is Tyler Morrell here to speak on the issue of school resource officers? All right. I see Mr. Morrell making his way up. Mr. Morrell, the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Good evening, and thank you, board members, for allowing me to speak and address my concerns about police in our schools this evening. Being a Fern Creek alumni myself, it's good to be in our rivals' territory, so thank you. The problem of racism in America is not incident-based, but systemic. We are here tonight following the events that occurred at J-Town High School, but we are also here because over 50 years have passed, yet the fundamentals of Jim Crow-era oppressions are alive today in our justice system, our streets, and sadly, our schools. This country's justice system targets the poor, the minorities, and those who disagree with the status quo. We can see examples of this well-oiled machine of oppression throughout the decades, from the start of the war on drugs to the rise of mass incarceration. This is not a new phenomenon, but there has been a cultural awakening that we have not seen since the height of the civil rights movement. As a result of these changes to our society, we have allowed the policing of our schools and of our children. But let us focus on the root cause of these issues and fears. The fear of guns and violence in our schools, the fear society instills to make officers in our schools seem justified. We must address the fears of those whose children will be criminalized from such a young age due to the presence of police in our schools. The fear of being criminalized and caught in the justice system built against them. The fear of those who later leave prisons to find that their rights to vote and to work have been taken from them, and it all starts with a small incident like that which occurred here at J-Town High School. I ask you to stop criminalizing our youth and instead invest in them. These students deserve a structured environment where they feel safe to learn and express themselves freely as this great nation intended. To the outsiders, please understand that our schools can be one of the only sources of stability for some of our students, and to enter these doors and to be afraid of being targeted and criminalized is a fear that no child should face in this country. We must break this cycle, and we will not rest until the powers that be make this change. We will not rest until you listen, and we will not rest, and you will never silence the voice of the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Morrell. Next up is Cindy Cushman. Cindy Cushman. Ms. Cushman, whenever you're ready.
Dear JCPS, I'm here to ask the board to consider removing SROs from schools. I'm a parent of 6 children who are former or current JCPS students, 3 of whom are black males. As a white parent of black sons, I've had a rude awakening to what black parents have known for many years. The unjust criminalization of black men in this country is very real, very painful, and very damaging to the young black males we're raising. I can cite numerous examples in my sons' lives in which they've already experienced this, but I will share with you one. One of my sons has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which causes speech and language deficits as well as brain damage in the area of the brain that controls emotions. By the time he was in kindergarten, he had an IEP, which included instructions on how to handle him when he got escalated. His kindergarten teacher evidently neglected to read this IEP and had a conflict with him one day that ultimately resulted in him physically attacking her. Having been on the receiving end of his attacks before, I knew they could be upsetting. But he was also small for his age and clearly developmentally delayed. So I was shocked when I arrived at the school to meet with her, and the first words out of her mouth were, "Just so you know, I plan to press criminal charges." Thankfully, when I reminded her of his IEP and pointed out that she did not follow it, she chose not to follow through. But I have often wondered in the years since, if that school had an SRO at the time, would he have already been under arrest by the time I arrived? If the teacher had had her way, he would have been. I also wondered what made her look at my child and see a criminal instead of a scared, damaged little boy. The answer to that is the color of his skin. According to the NAACP, African Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of whites. African American children represent 32% of children who are arrested, 42% of children who are detained, and 52% of children whose cases are judicially waived to criminal court. A report from the U.S. Sentencing Commission just last month published noted that black men serve sentences that are on average 19.1% longer than those for white men for similar crimes. The Justice Policy Institute notes that black students are 3 times more likely to be suspended or expelled than their white counterparts, and more likely to be disciplined for subjective reasons rather than provable offenses than white students are. One report from the Justice Policy Institute found that even controlling for a school district's poverty level, schools with officers had 5 times as many arrests for disorderly conduct as schools without them. Those arrests disproportionately affect black male students. And those black male students get significantly harsher consequences once they have found their way into the juvenile justice system than other students do. Parents of African American males in the school system are justified in our concerns that SROs in the schools actually threaten our sons' safety. To suggest that they be removed doesn't mean we don't care about school safety. It means we want the district to develop another way to keep our schools safe, one that makes everyone safe, not just some. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Melissa Payne. Melissa Payne. I'm sorry. Melissa Payne, okay. And actually, next will, right after Melissa Payne, I skipped someone, will be Nancy DeMartra. So you'll be right after Ms. Payne. My apologies.
Good evening. Welcome back, Dr. Polio. My name is Missy Payne, and I'm a teacher here at Jeffersontown High School. I'm also a very proud graduate of the school. I married a graduate, and both of my children attended and graduated from J-Town. I've been a teacher for 30 years, 18 in J-Town. So when I speak about this school, I speak about it from my heart. This place is my home. I was on the SBDM committee when we hired Dr. Polio as our principal. I was also on the SBDM committee when Dr. Polio requested that we get an SRO. I really didn't understand why we needed a school resource officer, but if Dr. Polio thought we needed one, the city of J-Town wanted to pay for half of it. I was fine with it, and I voted yes. It didn't take me too long to realize why we needed an SRO. I had a student shortly thereafter come to my classroom. She was visibly upset, very angry, and wanted to talk to Officer Mattingly. Well, I knew she wasn't going to do any chemistry that day, so I wrote her a pass, and she left. She was gone about 30 minutes, and when she came back, she was much calmer. And when I went up to her, I asked her, I said, "Are you going to be okay?" And she looked at me and she said, "You don't get it, do you?" And I guess I didn't. She said, "You know, where I come from, snitches get stitches, or worse, dead. But I can talk to Mattingly, and I know he's got my back." And then she went and she sat down. And that's when it hit me. I was focusing on the wrong letter in SRO. I thought of him as an officer. But what I should have realized immediately, that Officer Mattingly is a resource. It's the R I should have been focusing on. He is a lifeline. He is there for kids who need help. So when people talk about our SRO in a disparaging way, I kind of get upset. I don't care what video you watch from 5 different angles. You don't understand what an SRO does in our building. He is there to help us. He helps our kids. He gives them another chance. So when you all get a chance to vote on whether or not we need SROs in our school, I need you to focus on the right letter, not O for officer, but R for resource. Do not take this resource away from us. Our kids need them. I just have one more comment. Mr. Brady, when I retire, I'm coming after your seat. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Again, please keep that to a minimum. I appreciate it. Nancy DeMarta is our next speaker. My apologies for skipping over you earlier. That was oversight on my part. The floor is yours whenever you're ready.
I want to thank you all for allowing us to speak. And what I'd like to tell you, I wanted to look at the research at where the SORs or SROs started. And in 2004, this district had a $2 million grant from the federal government. And 18 schools, and you have articles, were involved in that program. Saying that, I want to say something else. You know, when children learn and feel good about themselves, there are not as many discipline problems. During my teaching career, I taught mainly the kids that were out of whack. But you know what I discovered? Whenever you get kids learning, the conduct ceases. And so what we need to be doing is working on ways to get all children learning. Now the second thing is, when children are poor, economically poor, and many minorities, and they come from language deficient homes, they need a phonics-based instruction in pre-K through the elementary to help them decode the language, to understand the language, to also be able to learn the language. Much of the underachievement is occurring and discipline problems because students are not successful. And we've got to look at how to make all youngsters successful. Now, as a parent, as a grandparent, I want the safest environments for children. I think all of us do. But we also need to look at the reasons that these problems occur. Also, we need in our schools, and I don't believe we need SROs. We need in our schools persons who can counsel with children anytime they need it. And that may mean extra persons in the school. Because a lot of times youngsters come from home with problems we can't solve, but they need someone to listen to them. I am very concerned about what happens in our school district. We have not done a good job in helping our children who are language deficient become learners. And we've got to do a better job. There are some people who do not believe in phonics-based instruction, but it works. If Cuba could take a year and cause all of their people to become literate, why can't we do it? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, is Miss Barbara Boyd. Ms. Boyd, when you're ready.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. I want to co-sign on everything Ms. Matra said, but I also want to have some, it won't be closure, but based on the information we have, the Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression is concerned about the allegations against Jeffersontown High School and believe the police have been shown to use excessive force on a high school student, as evident in the videos released via a variety of media outlets. And this is regarding SROs. The Kentucky Alliance believes that pointing a taser gun in a crowded hallway occupied by high school students was inappropriate, unacceptable, and traumatizing to the students. It shows a reckless lack of judgment on the part of the officer. The situation before the police was called was not life-threatening. However, after they arrived, it was. Obviously, the presence of the police escalated the situation. And those are the things that we have to look at and take into consideration when you put a police officer in a school. A police officer is just that. Excessive force by a police officer, staff member, or any adult is unacceptable. The use of excessive physical force, which also occurred, should not be tolerated, especially when it involves a student. These are children. The Jeffersontown police chief stated that what occurred was standard operating procedure. And if you'll note, when you look at the article that Mr. Matra gave you that was written in 2004, you see a police officer manhandling another police officer, and that was the standard. That's what they do to our children. Further, it was unconscionable and racist for him to call the students witnessing the situation a mob. Therefore, he needs that training that the Kentucky Alliance is recommending, that all JCPS schools be trained in and required to use the peace education model. That's the one thing that people never really consider. It's never said people shouldn't fight wars. They shouldn't fight each other. We also understand and are concerned that the students and parents, with regards to the way the students was treated by the police, our main concern is for the health and safety of all JCPS students while they are attending our school. And I have one more sentence. While viewing the video, at no time did we see the life of the officer being threatened. Therefore, there was no need for the use of a taser.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Next up is Ms. Chanel Helm. Ms. Helm.
Thank you. As an organizer within the Black Lives Matter Network, I want to establish a few facts before I begin with an opinion. One of those is that a fellow chapter in our network, Black Lives Matter Toronto, was successful at removing the SROs in their schools. And a few of the facts come from some incidents that had took place, but mainly because Black and brown children have always been ushered into the public school system outside of their neighborhoods via the police. It's not anything that they're not used to, and it's something that's always a constant, and that's one of our major concerns. One of our other concerns is something that is stated in the national SRO, I guess, clear principles. And it states that it's prohibited for SROs from becoming involved in formal school discipline situations that are the responsibility of school administrators. And on the incident that took place on November 1st, they were able to call in a contracted police department with Jefferson County. And it's clear and evident that there are no type of stipulations over what that behavior takes place once the outside contractor is in the school. We're talking about an armed force. The other fact I want to talk about, while much people don't care what happened in that video was clear and evident, a show of sign of several, not only students, being in an unsafe situation with no control whatsoever. There was no type of crowd control or any type of mechanisms. The schools populate over 1,000 people in them, period. That's 1,000 bodies. At any time, someone should have had some type of crowd control training or what have you. And whatever training was present wasn't evident. We heard children screaming, we heard children crying, we heard children not knowing what to do, and few people knowing what to do. We saw grown men beating a child, and we saw a grown man who is also an officer use his taser as an intimidation weapon to other children to get them to calm down. I don't use a taser in my home to get my children to calm down. Another factoid that I want people to be clear of, and this is coming from two people who have been investigating how behavior is to be obtained in schools since Sandy Hook, especially with the type of incident that took place. And as we make these arguments, we get these rebuttals around, well, what happens when somebody comes to shoot up a school? What happens when somebody brings a gun to school? What happens when those things happen? Those things took place in schools that didn't have SROs. We also know that research in this area is limited to a small number of studies, but these suggested that the children in schools with SROs will become more likely to be arrested for low-level offenses. We also know that schools with SROs may also be more likely to report non-serious violent crimes to the police than schools lacking SROs. And it is clear and evident that there are schools doing wonderful things without SROs because they exist in Jefferson County. And so what we're looking forward to is building a community. And it's clear and evident that this issue of having SROs is not providing any type of community. There are supporters here, there are no parents, there are no students to also share in their support. It's one thing that I want to end with is that we must understand that the MOU is only in place because it is to investigate violent crimes that take place and that reside for the students that go to certain schools where SROs are used at. And so that means that they're taking place in resides that have displacement currently taking place. I want people to pay attention to that we suffer from a food apartheid and displacement, that we suffer from the lack of resources, and that we suffer from a lack of community.
Your time has expired.
And situations like this
Next up
create a lack of community.
Is Josie Raymond. Is Josie Raymond here? The floor is yours when you're ready.
Hi there. Thank you all. I'm here tonight because I taught 7th and 8th grade in a militarized school, and I often saw violence inflicted on my students, and some of it was my fault. I now work in student success and retention at the University of Louisville, and I'm running to be the state representative of District 31, which includes J-Town High School. On my worst day of teaching, my students locked me out of my classroom and ate the leftover pizza that I had brought for lunch. I was in the hallway trying to get back in, very embarrassed, hoping that the principal didn't walk around the corner. And today I think it's a good thing that our school police officers did not walk around the corner. I fear what they would have done to get the door open and what they would have done to the students eating my lunch. It never should have happened, not because the students shouldn't make immature attempts at gaining power, but because I should have been better trained and more experienced. I did not yet have the tools to properly lead that classroom. On other days, the students would get in fights and be separated with extreme aggression by our school police officers, in part, I know, out of frustration that they were dealing with the same students again and again. I saw students handcuffed and body slammed for simple non-compliance. The students who watched it, the ones who sat dutifully completing their work, they didn't feel relief, they didn't feel any safer, and they didn't feel any happier seeing their teenage peers slammed to the ground by adults. They were upset and afraid at first, but over time, they were hardened. Harm was done even to students who were never physically touched. Of course, fighting students need to be separated by trained adults who are not, in most cases, teachers. This happens in group homes every single day. But separation and restraint for students' own safety is different than what we saw recently. Right now, we're asking only the students to shut off their adrenaline and calm their prefrontal cortex. I remember one of my students who was 13 lying on the floor handcuffed in a crowded hallway, crying, having lost all control and dignity. What worked better for him was a counseling session with a school social worker, or a private meeting with a teacher, or a chaperoned walk down the long hallway, or a promise that he would be left alone for 15 minutes before someone came to talk to him about what had happened. Punishments can come later, when everyone involved is more reasoned. I'm not trying to get into a bad apple argument on either side. I'm arguing against overreaction. You're seeing behavior issues made into criminal issues, and adult aggression is coming out of a supposition of risk. If any of our own children got in a fight with one another, we would try to separate them in the fastest, safest way. Our primary concern would be their preservation, because we love them. Eventually, I got my classroom under control, and I learned how to teach, both how to deliver the content and manage the room. Toward the end of that first year of teaching, we knew that our school was being taken over by the state, and there was very little hope. Our school police officer committed suicide, and those same kids who had misbehaved in violent ways, who had been body slammed to the ground, made him posters in memorial. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, thank you. Let's keep that to a minimum, please. Next up is Karen Haines. Karen Haines. This floor is yours, Ms. Haines, when you're ready.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Karen Haines. I'm coming to you as a parent of 2 J-Town High School students and 1 Ramsey Middle School student. I strongly feel we need SROs in schools. At the last meeting, I saw signs that read, "Stop police violence in schools." But I ask, what about student violence in school? If a student is so out of control that they assault a police officer, then they would definitely assault a teacher or other students. I'm concerned that people have mentioned this as a racial issue. In my opinion, this is not a racial issue, but a safety issue. In fact, last year when a student prompted a lockdown by pulling a gun on another student on school property, those involved were all white students. Again, this is not an issue of race, but a safety issue. I was equally as comforted then knowing Officer Mattingly and the J-Town police were there to handle that situation and protect the students and the staff. Also, if a random shooter walked in off the street and started shooting, an armed SRO could potentially save many lives by reacting instantly instead of waiting for officers to arrive on scene. At the last board meeting, when things got out of control, board members weren't expected to handle it, but they called for police to help. But that's exactly what some of you are proposing teachers do, and that's not fair. I urge you all to volunteer some of your time at a high school with resource officers, and then you will quickly see why they're needed. I would not feel safe sending my children to school if SROs weren't there, and many parents and teachers I have spoken with feel the same. All students and staff are not safe without SROs in schools, and if they are removed, then my children will also be removed from JCPS. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haines. Again, thank you. That concludes our persons requesting to address the board on agenda items. Now we will move on to persons requesting to address the board on non-agenda items. As I said earlier, I believe there was some confusion on some of which list to actually sign up on, so we may have some subjects or some topics on this one that actually might have been better suited for the SRO discussion. We're going to move on to our first speaker of this, which is Deborah O'Gorman, regarding SIEGE, Support Epilepsy and Guiding Epileptics. Ms. O'Gorman. Is Ms. O'Gorman here? All right. Next up on the list will be Brenda Farmer regarding an item regarding guns down, mics up. Brenda Farmer. Brenda Farmer. All right. Next up is to be Yvonne Rovera regarding consolidating TAP schools. Ms. Rovera, the floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to address you. The last time I spoke about my school and my wonderful students. Tonight, I'd like to speak to you about girls who should have been my students, but were not. Statistics that I got from the National Conference of State Legislators from 2013 are that 2/3 of the families that are begun by teenagers end up poor. Only 40% of teen moms get diplomas, and less than 2% are able to finish college by the time they are 30 years old. The damage to them does not end with one generation, but goes into the next one. The children of teen moms are 50% more likely to repeat a grade, and 2/3 of the students who are born to teen moms graduate from high school. That's compared to 81% of students who are born to older parents. As you know, there's been a difficulty with some students in getting into TAP. Right now, we have a cutoff period, which we've never had before. If you were not in the school by September 11th, you have to wait for January. So that's October, November, December. 3 months where you can just give up. You can show up in January, but you haven't had any prenatal care, where you're still liable for all these statistics that happen to girls who don't have a clinic on site, so they lose that school, who don't have student advocates, sometimes called social workers, to look out after them, who don't have WIC to come with them, who don't have people to help them out, and who don't have small classrooms and teachers used to teaching teen moms. We don't know how many students are not at TAP. Is it a dozen that have been left behind? Is it 4 dozen? We don't know. But we should know before any decision is made on what is the correct size of a school. Right now, they're counting on this school having 100 students max. Well, if you turn away enough students, I bet you will have 100 students max. I think before any decision is made, we need to know how many lives we're talking about. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on to our next speaker will be Barry Finley regarding DuPont Manual High School. Is Barry Finley here? The floor is yours when ready.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. I want to start off by saying I'm a father of 2 students at DuPont Manual High School, so I'm speaking from context and personal experience. I wanted to speak with you briefly regarding the audio and the comments that were made from the principal at DuPont Manual High School. I was able to hear that audio in its entirety, and I wanted to address that publicly and say that I thought the comments were unprofessional, inappropriate, selfish, and racially insensitive. I've also had several personal encounters, unfortunately, due to issues around my daughters at DuPont Manual High School, and I wanted to share 2 of those with you. I questioned the principal of DuPont Manual High School about his use of the N-word. His rebuttal to me was, did I understand the context in which he used it? I quickly explained there's never a context for that word to be used. He deemed that it was appropriate in his use. In a second phone conversation with the principal of DuPont Manual High School regarding my daughter, that was the context of the conversation. He referred to my wife as this beautiful, attractive lady in front of me. She was there in his office at the time. I was unaware of that, dealing with the same issue regarding my daughter. I was shocked and offended. I feel that the principal at DuPont Manual High School has created a toxic environment for the students. The cultural climate at the school currently is at a terrible state, in my opinion. Students feel like they have to take sides, factions within the school. Students have now been pitted against each other. I question, is this the leadership that we want at the top school in the state of Kentucky? Students are hurt. Students are hurting right now. And again, I speak from personal experience having 2 kids within the school. How do we help our kids heal? And how do we move forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Just to remind our speakers that kind of went up to the line on that one, that please present their remarks in a manner that is consistent with the orderly conduct of the meeting and that are not defamatory or abusive to personnel. Next will be Valerie Blackwell regarding the Teenage Parent Program. Ms. Blackwell, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Dr. Polio and members of the board. I am Valerie Blackwell, who after 27 years as an outreach counselor and student advocate, retired from the Georgia Chaffee Teenage Parent Program, TAP, in 2015. Under the leadership of Georgia Chaffee and Sarah York, I observed firsthand the unprecedented growth of this visionary program, which has served thousands of pregnant and parenting teenagers since its inception in 1970. From its humble beginnings in the basement of a church, TAP has been recognized as an international and national model. Visitors from Germany, Sweden, Africa, Romania, and hundreds from the United States have toured our school over the years. In 2005, TAP received the National Organization of Adolescent Pregnancy and Prevention's Most Outstanding Teen Parent Program Award. In 2010, ABC Prime Time aired a one-hour special with host Jay Shadler, referring to TAP as one of the most amazing places you'll ever see. In 2011, MTV produced Baby High, filming for a semester our TAP students and the services we provided. In 2010 through 14, TAP received over $1 million from the state legislature for our science, math, and the right technology grant. And by 2010, the academic norm was that 100% of our seniors be enrolled in post-secondary education, which resulted in thousands of dollars of college scholarships. These facts extrapolated to produce educated, employed, and contributing citizens who otherwise would have become high school dropouts, resulting in increased welfare enrollment and child neglect, a fiscal and social detriment to our community. Given these accolades, I and the many I represent ask the legitimate question, why are the Westport and South Park schools proposed to close in 2018 and the program relocated to Camp Edwards, limiting enrollment to only 100 students? The current low attendance at both schools appears to indicate that there is not a demand to keep these schools open, but these numbers have been negatively skewed. The fact is, enrollment is low because in the past few years, pregnant students have been turned away or the process discouragingly complicated. And we are asking why, given the policy has always been to readily admit pregnant teenagers. In the past, we have easily enrolled 150 or more students per school per year and accommodated up to 122 children in our child care centers at each school. The rationale doesn't add up. Consequently, we are requesting that the board postpone the closing of these schools and launch an official inquiry as to the reasons behind these enrollment rejections and why JCPS has chosen not to meet the demand which it has successfully done in the past. Please consider the long-term impact in our community and the personal empowerment TAP has provided and should continue to provide to all our confused and scared pregnant teens in our district. To quote one of our former students, you cannot put a price tag on hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Mays is our next speaker. Is Mike Mays here? Mike Mays? All right. Moving on, William Wolf. Is William Wolf here? Talk about the Teenage Parent Program.
I am here to speak in support of the TAP schools and against the currently proposed consolidation. People say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's pretty good advice. But its corollary is just as valuable. If it is broke, then fix it. And the TAP schools need fixing. They need change, not to the physical structure, not to the staff, the instructional staff and the teachers, but to the policies and management that have spent them spiraling into near collapse. What's been going on at the schools boggles the mind. Cutting enrollment periods short to meet some phony, needless deadline, hanging no vacancy signs when there are plenty of seats that need filling, and now trying to consolidate two schools into one tiny and ill-suited building. It just doesn't make sense. It's almost as if someone has decided to shrink the schools down to the point where they could drown in a bathtub. And I think I hear the water running. Imagine for a moment that U of L's basketball program were hit with severe sanctions for rules violation, like that could ever happen. And the former national champions face several long years of losing. Imagine that the crowds that once filled the 22,000 plus seats of the Yum Center dwindle to a fourth that size. Would we blame the players and the fans and rush to strike a deal with the Broadbent Arena? Or would we put the blame where it belonged, on failed leadership, and work to rescue the program? I don't really need to answer that question. We would do everything possible to invigorate and restore a program that has made Louisville proud. Let's do the same for our TAP schools and reject this proposal for consolidation.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Next up is Autumn Nagel. Autumn Nagel to talk about upcoming PTA events for December.
Hi, thank you for letting me talk to you today. I'm Autumn Nagel, I'm 15th District PTA President. Just want to give you some ideas of some wonderful things that are going to happen this December and invite you to join us and everyone in the audience. On Saturday, December 9th, the Clothing Assistance Program will do their Take What You Can Tote event. It will be held at Central High School Stadium. It is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We invite all of our families to come out. You don't need an appointment, you just show up. Families will be let in. They're going to be able to get clothing for the entire family. We do realize that these families need these clothing, and they also use them for holiday gifts underneath their trees. So this year, we are actually adding books and small toys. Having said that, if any of you all have books, small toys, or clothing that would like to donate to the CAP program, they can be dropped off at Central High School Stadium from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. In addition, if you want to volunteer for the event, please call CAP at 485-3535 and we'll get you on that volunteer list. The second event that we're going to be doing this December is our Reflections program. And if you're unfamiliar with the Reflections program, it is a wonderful program that is headed out by National PTA. It encourages all students in all grade levels and all abilities to showcase their artistic abilities in 6 different categories: visual arts, photography, film production, dance choreography, literature, and music composition. On Thursday, December 14th, at the Durrett Auditorium at Louisville Male High School, we will be awarding 115 students awards and recognizing their achievements. After they are given their awards, we are going to have an art gallery that will have their art on the walls. There'll be cookies and punch and a time to really showcase these wonderful students and the work that they have done. I really invite each of you all to join us. It's a great program and you will see some amazing artwork. I am leaving with you a personal invitation, a list of all the students from your all schools that will be honored, and the information about Take What You Can Tote. Again, thank you for letting me speak to you all and have a great night.
Thank you, Ms. Nagel. Next up is Mike Mcdaniel. Mike McDaniel to talk about, we'll say, the principal at DuPont Manual High School. Again, remember, disparaging remarks are not allowed.
Dr. Polio, Chairman Brady, board members, thank you for the opportunity to address this group. My remarks will be brief, and the purpose of my remarks will be to clear up a misconception that, believe it or not, was started by the Courier-Journal. In order to do that, I'm going to read to you verbatim a letter that I wrote to the editor of the Courier-Journal back on November 16th, 12 days ago, which of course has not been printed yet. And I might add that once upon a time, 40 or 50 years ago, I was a journalist myself, so I understand subtle editorializing. Dear Editor, in lieu of the fact that reporter Mandy McLaren has not bothered to return my 3 phone messages, I feel compelled to write this letter in order to set the record straight. The headline, as well as the story on today's update, and that would be last Thursday, a week ago, on today's update on the Jerry Mays fiasco, implies that Manual's alumni want the principal fired. This is about as far from the truth that responsible journalists could be. First, the group of alumni mentioned in the story are not active members in our alumni association. They are merely graduates acting independently. The official DuPont Manual Alumni Association, of which I am the director, boasts of 3,100 active dues payers. And if it were possible to poll them all, I could promise that 99.9% of them would support Jerry Mays. He is an outstanding educator and exemplary leader. We are proud to claim him. And I might add a footnote, in order to be fair to Mandy McLaren, she did return my phone call 3 days later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. Next up will be Dana Horton regarding DuPont Manual High School. Is Dana Horton here? Dana Horton. All right. Next up will be Haley Gordon regarding the teenage pregnancy program. Haley Gordon. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Haley Gordon. I'm a 19-year-old freshman in college attending JCTC. I have a 3-year-old daughter named Brittany, and I was pregnant at only 15 years old. I suffer from seizures caused by anxiety and stress, so getting my education has always been a battle. My freshman year, I found out I was pregnant. I knew I could never go back to my home school because it wasn't safe for the child I was now responsible for. Because of my morning sickness and seizures, I began home hospital school until I had my daughter. At 2 months old, my little girl and I got on a bus at 5:00 a.m. and traveled to Westport Tap. My mom had toured the school while I was pregnant. She told me I should at least give it a chance. I was very skeptical. My first day of school at Tap, I was petrified, no idea what to expect. Before meeting teachers and students, I met the daycare along with my newborn. I fell in love with everyone who worked there from that first day to graduation. Those women helped me raise my daughter for 3 years. They helped me and taught me so much. TAP's daycare deserves so much appreciation, right along with the teachers and staff. I was not used to sitting in a classroom with a small amount of students, and what I really wasn't accustomed to was having a day full of teachers who loved their students and loved teaching. TAP's teachers are some of the most empathetic, helpful, kind people in this world. TAP's teachers taught me in a way that was so well planned and constructed that I still to this day have retained information learned from class my sophomore year. TAP also has a clinic in the school that helps girls all day long. Some students would come to school pregnant with no prenatal care. Then they would be introduced to the clinic and get all the help that they needed in order to have a healthy pregnancy and delivery. I personally grew a very close relationship with the clinic. When I would have a seizure at school, they took spectacular care of me every time. They knew exactly what to do and ensured me everything was okay every time I woke up from a seizure. They care about their students. Everyone cares. Being a TAP student is being part of a family. You never feel alone. You're never afraid to reach out for help because you develop such a strong bond with your peers and the staff. There is never a day that goes by when I don't think about TAP and the many memories I get the honor of having. A piece of my heart will forever be in TAP. TAP helped me sculpt myself into the successful young woman I am today. I would not be half the mother or the person I am now if it weren't for the School with Heart. TAP means everything to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Gay Adelman. Gay Adelman, regarding our day in Frankfurt. The floor is yours when ready.
Good evening, dear JCPS. You probably heard the GOP House Caucus met today about pensions. Word is that special session is imminent as early as December 4th. There is still no proposal that involves new revenue, and the outcome of the passing of any bill that is on the backs of educators will be devastating to our schools. The current proposed pension solution is not only on the backs of teachers, staff, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, and others who have already paid into the pension, it comes at the expense of our students. Make no mistake, we will march on Frankfurt. If it is not district-led, it will be community-led. 38 districts in the state have already declared that they will be marching. Half of them have already announced that they'll be providing transportation. We have a sub-shortage already. I would like to encourage the district to allow educators and employees to exercise their democratic right. Once a session is called, it's been recommended that JCPS go on day 5. So let's plan now to minimize hardships on families, explore field trip options for those whose parents must work. Much of what you're seeing spill over right now, tonight, speakers speaking about, are a result of external threats. We know your hands are tied. We've got the governor, the legislators, we've got ALEC and Koch brothers. We've got more operatives arriving every day. We've got the open audit hanging over our heads. We've got the threat of a state takeover. It's impossible to navigate. We understand that. But as your constituent, that's unacceptable. And continuing to live in fear of what they might do only makes matters worse. We need you to focus on your constituents, not these operatives and for billionaires and privatizers. You can build culture and climate by leading the charge and doing what's prudent by declaring the day and informing the community of the plan, providing transportation and options for working families, and give as much notice as possible, and we will support you. In the meantime, Dear JCPS will make an effort to keep the community informed of these logistics, dates, and developments in order to minimize confusion. We will reach out to district, board, teacher groups, child care providers, community partners. We recognize that we will have blind spots, and that's why we're making this announcement, so that groups that want to be involved in this solution can reach out, and we will be coordinating the information. Either way, though, we will have our day in Frankfurt, and we hope we have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Roland O'Daniel. Is Roland O'Daniel here? Roland O'Daniel. Next up will be Lenny Ponce. Lenny Ponce. Okay. Next is Sean Nika Marie Queen. Sean Nika Marie Queen. All right. Steve Mattingly. There's no time of Louisville Promise Data Sharing Agreement. Dr. Polio, I'll turn it over to you to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair Brady. As I mentioned in the superintendent's report, the Louisville Promise Partnership is one of the most promising things on the horizon for our district, with a couple of things in mind. Number one, increasing the wraparound services for our students throughout our community, all JCPS students. And number two, guaranteeing that scholarship, that 2-year scholarship for every JCPS student. So clearly there's a lot of work to be done in this, but it is some meaningful work that I believe, as using the analogy of a tree, gets to the roots of our issues that we can address. So the community partnership has done a lot of work. As you recall, a couple months ago, we signed an MOU to be a part of and explore Louisville Promise. The second step now is a data sharing agreement with schoolhouse partners that are going to take the coming months, if approved, to really look at the pathway analytics in JCPS, how we do things, the finances, all kinds of things, to look for ways that we can improve systems and structures and partner throughout our community to improve these processes. So very exciting work. I'm going to turn it over to Denise, Dan, and Jonathan to briefly talk about the data sharing agreement before we take questions.
Thank you. With me tonight is Felice Noodleman, who's Executive Vice President for the Weiss Institute, Denise Nelson, who's an Institute Fellow with Weiss Institute, and Dan Barkin, who's a Principal with Schoolhouse Partners. The data sharing agreement before you for consideration will allow Schoolhouse Partners with Weiss Institute to do a very detailed analysis that'll take approximately 6 to 9 months. There are two major components of it. One of it is pathway analytics, which essentially looks at 14 different data points along the entire line from pre-K through post-secondary, and allows us to analyze the places where students are on track and off track to graduate. It'll also allow us to identify particular subsets of students that are doing well or not well, and that will allow us to think about strategies to address those particular issues. So prioritizing where our focus needs to lie to create success. I think that connects very well with the idea of organizational coherence that Dr. Polio speaks on a regular basis. The second part of it goes hand in glove with that, which is fiscal analytics. How do we spend our money now? What are the buckets that we spend? Are they the most impactful? Are they the ones that are actually going to help students learn? That process will be ongoing where over the course of time, Schoolhouse Partners will be in conversation with us about what they're learning, what they see, ask questions of the district about what we think the data says to create a set of findings. Those findings will be the basis of recommendations that they will bring forward on behalf of the board for your consideration. Essentially is informing your work to make good decisions on using the funds that we have, particularly in the current budget environment, most effectively. And then all of that connects to the bigger Louisville promise, which, as Dr. Polio talked about, is wraparound services where the community is coming together to provide those services for kids. So the city's doing a similar fiscal analysis, and other community partners over time will be connected to this as well. So you'll have this really robust, data-driven way of looking at things, and we're hopeful that it will bring significant gains to the students of Jefferson County Public Schools.
Okay, with that, do any board members have any questions or concerns or any items to discuss? Member Horn.
I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for answering all of my questions. A lot of the board work that I do is behind the scenes because we're provided, very detailed contracts and agreements, and I was able to read it ahead of time and have plenty of time to get some some questions answered. I think the only one was just to make sure that we would follow up and get the other participants from Schoolhouse, just as those will come forward. That would be great.
That was an immediate follow-up after our meeting yesterday.
Yep, okay, that's it. But I'm really excited about the possibilities that this Say Yes, Weiss Institute, Louisville Promise, this collaboration can bring to JCPS. I'm very, very excited about the possibilities and look forward to the findings and also to collaborating on the recommendations.
Anyone else? Vice Chair Wellner.
Yeah, I'll just make a few comments as well. So I'm very excited about this work. I think ever since Ms. Horn and I have gotten on the board, one of the things we've asked for is show us that the resources are being spent in ways that are improving outcomes for all students. And that's what this is about. Yep. So we've got philanthropic funds that's going to uncover this, do this work for us and uncover how the funds are being spent. Are we improving outcomes for students? And I want it as part of this because here in Louisville, the Louisville Promise work is so tied up in the Harvard By All Means project, and those of you know that Dr. Polio and I were able to attend that convening in Harvard Graduate School of Education, and I want to say something that I think pertains to what some of the speakers tonight were addressing, and that's something that has been very much front and center of our discussions at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and that is that there needs to be an acknowledgement that what we are currently doing, and when I say we, I mean in education all across the country, is not working for all children. That there have been reform effort after reform effort after reform effort, and still outcomes for students remain highly racialized and highly stratified by socioeconomic status. And when we were at the By All Means convening, they talked about this, what's happening here in Louisville with the Louisville Promise work, that this is really the forefront of an important national movement to do things very differently and to bring together systems to provide students the supports they need so that they can be successful in school, and to take this very high-level, multi-system, cross-sector work and to improve outcomes. One of the terms that I learned at the convening was targeted universalism, that when everybody gets what they need, everybody benefits. And this work is about making sure that every student gets what he or she needs, every student, all means all. So again, I'm very excited about this. I think the Harvard Graduate School of Education, in undertaking this By All Means project, and I'm going to target this specifically, I know we have a group of Bellarmine Masters in Teaching students, first semester students in the audience here tonight. And so the Harvard Graduate School of Education and this By All Means project has acknowledged, and this is, one of the country's leading schools of education, that our current approach to education is not serving many of our children well. And so what's needed for children to be successful involves many domains that we can no longer just look to schools to solve all of the problems, to solve all of the challenges, that we have to do this as a full community joining together. And I hope that as new teachers enter the teaching force, they will have the support of the community around them. We don't need to be blaming the community and then the community blaming schools. We're all in this together. And the only way we're going to improve outcomes for all kids is by joining forces and getting rid of that false dichotomy. So I just wanted to make those remarks and to thank you for the work, and I'm very excited about this partnership and very eager to get the analytics work and to see what that looks like.
Further discussion? Member Gies and then Member Kolb.
I again would like to echo some of the comments and sentiments of my colleagues on the board. Last week I had the opportunity to sit down with all three of you and ask my questions. And in asking those questions, I again caught that same sense of excitement that I hear both from Member Wilner and Member Horn. I shared with those seated around the board table that our district should be guided by one principle and one principle alone, and that is educational outcome. What is the educational outcome for our students? I'm excited to see what information you can bring us to help us determine how we can continue to make those educational outcomes for students. Again, Jefferson County should be led by one maxim alone, and that is educational outcome.
Member Kolb?
Yeah, I'm really excited about, data and excitement, I know don't usually go together, but that's the kind of person I am. And I hope that one of the things that comes out of this is that not only are we better equipped and better able to make decisions based on hard data, not subjective interpretation, not our personal kind of preconceived opinion, but what actually works, is that we can set a model for other entities in and around the city and state that you're going to get much better outcomes if you make decisions this way. Because I think there are, politics is always going to factor into things and kind of skew. People are going to interpret the data in ways that fit their agenda. We're never going to get rid of that. But I think one of the things that I'm most hopeful about is that we can be a model of really focusing on what the data says, getting away as much as is possible from ideological dead ends that just end up in the same talking points going back and forth, and really just focusing on, look, here's what the numbers say, and based on this, we need to make decisions that's in the best interest for kids. So really excited and really glad to be able to have this opportunity.
Any further discussion? Sorry, we're in a straight line here, so I want to assume that's Member Duncan. Can't really see you, but Member Duncan, please go ahead.
I just had one thing I want clarified. When we talk about this as being a data sharing agreement, we're talking about our sharing data with you. We're not talking about you sharing data with other people, other groups, or other outside forces.
That's correct. The agreement is actually making that concrete and very, very clear that this data is going to be protected. There won't be any student identifying data that would be able to be shared. So that's exactly right.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. So again, to echo many of the comments that my colleagues have made, I think that the Louisville Promise initiative in and of itself is fairly important and can be very transformative for this district. And an important part of that is understanding what the outcomes are, and the only way you can really do that in a hard way is by looking at the data. This data, as Member Duncan just pointed out, will be going basically to schoolhouse partners as the data repository, for lack of a better term right now, and the analyzer of that data. It will not necessarily be shared with other entities within the Louisville Promise partnership. And that's important because there's issues with FERPA, which is basically student privacy regulations that we need to adhere to, and this does conform to those regulations. And as Jonathan Lowe just pointed out, that there will be no specific student identifying information that will be a part of this, the data that is shared. Getting back to the more broader point of what we're really trying to accomplish here with Louisville Promise is that, as I've said in times before, a lot of what we're trying to do here is address things that happen beyond the classroom walls. And very often this has to deal with issues of poverty, and endemic poverty, especially within our community. Those are things that not any one particular board member, board, or even one district are going to be able to solve in and of themselves. It's going to take a collective effort from everyone within the community. That'll be on the city side, within the faith community, within the business community, and this is an effort to be able to pull all those different segments together to be able to come together for one common purpose, and that is improve educational outcomes and educational achievement for our students. And one of the ways we can do that is by dealing with some of these issues that, come into the classroom from outside of the school. I think that is a very worthwhile and valiant effort that we must do as a community. And if done correctly, hopefully, it will serve not just as an example to other districts, but will also serve as a framework for us to be able to work together as a community in more efficient ways. So I'm very hopeful that this will be the ultimate outcome of this project. I've always been excited about this. I know that there is talk about a scholarship element of this, so when our graduates graduate from JCPS, there are other options available to them. I will tell you, as a board member, I know that probably gets a lot more of the attention, but as a board member, I'm actually more enamored with the fact that we will be able to get more resources inside our schools, such as more counselors, which has been a point of discussion here regarding SROs. And I think, yes, absolutely, we need more counselors. We need more trauma-informed care. We need to have a lot more holistic way we look at dealing with our students. And this is one way that I think the best way to be able to deal with that with this project. So I want to thank all of you, especially for the time that you spent with each of these board members to answer our questions, and I know they were numerous. It was, it took a lot of effort for that to come together. So thank you on that. With that being said, is there any further discussion? Does anyone have any further comments? Okay. So I would like to ask, is there a motion to approve the Louisville Promise Data Sharing Agreement? Motion made by Member Horn, seconded by Vice Chair Wellner. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to move on to our informational items. We've had one that's been withdrawn, so we have 3 of them to discuss. Before we start on this, I do want to make some remarks and talk about a little bit of the elephant in the room. Obviously, our last meeting was I would say, the exception to the norm of the way this board operates. I am hopeful that we will return back to our normal way that we deliberate between these issues. I know that at the beginning of this year, I had said as the new board chair that as elected representatives, it's our duty to advocate for our students and our constituency. And that means that we have open discussion, that means we have questions, and that means we use our voice. And sometimes that also means playing devil's advocate. I think that that still holds true, and I think that, you know, there are certain passions that some board members have, and that is legitimate. And we can certainly have those discussions. But I also want to draw, you know, a couple things from our KSBA board leadership guide, which talks about voices, when board members voice opinions frankly and courteously in board meetings, and vote for what's best in the interest of children and within the district. Maintain harmonious relations with other board members and the superintendent, and know that it is possible to disagree without being disagreeable. I will also note that this board has overcome, I would say, significant challenges when we work together as a team. We have negotiated a change in leadership at the district level. We have brought on our acting superintendent. We have reestablished board committees. We've convened now quarterly board retreats, which has improved communication amongst board members. And we're in the process of reconfiguring our budgeting process to take into account board priorities. And that's just among the few things that have changed pretty dramatically, I think, over the course of this year. We work really well together as a team. And I'm hopeful that we will continue to do so. So with that in mind, I would like to talk about our first discussion item, which is a discussion regarding school resource officers in our schools. So with that in mind, does anyone want to start off the discussion? Sure. No one else is raising their hand, so Member Cole.
And I appreciate this being a discussion item, Chair Brady. I want to begin by saying that anybody, I will gladly sit down with J-Town teachers and staff. I will meet with Sue Foster and the AFSCME board. I will meet with parents who spoke here tonight in favor of SROs. My contact information is on the JCPS website. I'm easy to find. Please reach out to me. I also want to repeat something that I have said every single time I've spoken about SROs, and that's that this is not about any individual SRO. I have absolutely no problem believing that many of our SROs care deeply about kids and want to be a positive role model for them. And from what I've heard about Officer Mattingly, it sounds like he could be a great candidate to work in JCPS security, but just not as an SRO. One of the arguments I've heard against removing SROs is that it would be a knee-jerk reaction. However, the only reason we have SROs in schools to begin with is due to knee-jerk reactions. First in the late 1960s when desegregation started, then in the 1990s when many prominent politicians began essentially a propaganda campaign to gain support for the war on drugs. As one research report found, and everything I'm going to say from here on out comes directly from either a news article or a research report that I will be glad to post to the board minutes or you make available to whoever wants to look at it with their own eyes. As one report found, in a national survey, neither law enforcement nor school officials cited levels of violence within their schools as a reason for starting a school resource officer program. However, for school officials, the fear of school violence generated by national media attention was the most common specified reason to adopt a school resource officer program. The fear-based decision to bring police into schools can result in concrete harms to the educational environment and to the achievement of students. So one of the things we just did, well, the thing we just did was just approve a data sharing agreement so that we could be better as a board at making decisions based on firm facts, data, and evidence. So as some of our speakers pointed out, the data is pretty clear that black students are arrested or referred to law enforcement at school at over twice the rate of white students. Black girls are nearly 4 times more likely to be arrested at school than their white counterparts. And researchers at Georgetown University found that the explosion of police in the nation's schools is forcing increasing numbers of black and brown girls, in particular, into the school-to-prison pipeline. I've also heard the argument that this disproportionality reflects disproportionate rates of misbehavior. However, there's been numerous studies that have been conducted on that point, and every single one of them has shown that, or has failed to provide any evidence that there are racial disparities in misbehavior. In other words, research is definitive that white and black students misbehave in schools with similar frequency. So, I'm going to try to be a little bit brief. Too late, I know. So one of the other research reports says that SROs are supposed to encompass a triad of law enforcement, counseling, and teaching. Speaking to the one of the speakers earlier tonight made this point about focusing on the research rather than the officer. And I completely agree with that, and I think that a lot of individual officers probably do this, individuals, but when it comes to their job description, unfortunately, the primary role is law enforcement. I mean, that's what they are legally required to do. And in fact, the National Association of School Resource Officers explicitly cautions their members against converting some violations of law and school rules into teachable moments and educational opportunities, but instead encourages them to treat them as law violations. So police, there's no doubt that police can play an important role in emergency preparedness, but this role simply does not require regular police presence patrolling a school, nor does research support reliance on school-based police to deter school shootings. And there's a few negative consequences of focusing on police as ways to do this. First, a narrow focus on assigning police to schools detracts from creating a comprehensive emergency response plan. Schools and communities may also overlook other evidence-based approaches to school safety. And in fact, in 2000, the Secret Service reported that in its analysis of past incidents of targeted violence at schools, based on that analysis, the Secret Service recommended that schools make the best use of their resources by focusing on prevention. And as, again, one of our speakers alluded to earlier tonight, I believe, the Sandy Hook Advisory Commission, when they released their report and recommendations, they focused on safety solutions like ensuring that all classroom doors can be locked and keeping an up-to-date emergency plan. In reference to the specific incident that happened at J-Town High School, the risk, and this is again quoting from a research report, the involvement of a police officer in school discipline can escalate alarmingly. If a student attempts to shake a police officer's grip, as happened here at J-Town, they may find themselves charged with resisting arrest or felony obstruction, wrestled to the ground, placed in a chokehold, or with an arm snapped behind their back, or in the case of J-Town, tased. Unfortunately, this is not the first incident of police in schools harming children. In 2015, the Courier-Journal reported that an SRO struck a 13-year-old across the face, knocking the child to the ground for cutting the lunch line. Even though LMPD knew of these assault allegations, and even though the principal of that school thought the SRO would be removed, LMPD left the SRO in the school, and 5 days later, the same police officer placed a 13-year-old in a chokehold until the child passed out. Emergency services were never called, and frankly, we're all lucky that this child didn't die. Additionally, recently, WDRB reported that some LMPD officers are working dangerously long hours with little oversight. One of these officers happens to provide security at Mayo High School. Metro Councilman David James, who's also a former LMPD detective, has said that this is putting a lot of people in danger, including, and I'm adding this part, including students at Mayo High School. Thomas Barker is a longtime professor of criminal justice at Eastern Kentucky University and a former Birmingham, Alabama police officer, and he said about this that if officers worked that many hours, it would be dangerous. So by way of conclusion, the J-Town incident, the 2 counts of assault by the LMPD SRO and JCPS I just talked about, the fact that an LMPD officer who's working at Mayo is working dangerously long hours and putting people at risk, not even to mention the horrific sexual abuse scandal in LMPD, give us ample reason to suspect that we're putting our students at risk by continuing to allow police in our buildings in non-emergency situations. The good news is that recent efforts to scale back law enforcement involvement in schools have not caused increases in school crime, and where it has been tried, incidents of student misbehavior have actually decreased. School safety can be addressed without on-site SROs. In fact, school safety is much better addressed without SROs. That's simply what data and evidence and research tell us. So we're under an audit because there was an extreme lack of accountability under the former administration. If we don't hold J-Town PD and LMPD accountable, who will? We simply cannot allow people in our buildings to cause riots, and that is exactly what a J-Town police officer did on November 1st. Under the current arrangement, the board has little practical control and oversight into how police officers operate in schools. This is simply not a responsible thing for us to do as a board. So, as I said, I'd be happy to meet with any groups that want to talk about this. Please reach out to me, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
All right. Further discussion? Member Duncan.
I have a couple questions, and then I'd like to talk a little bit, but I want to ask Dr. Polio, what data do you have from our 25 principals where we have SROs indicating that they do not want SROs in their building?
I don't have that data.
Isn't the decision about staffing in a building basically principal and SBDM council decision?
Not necessarily with SROs. I mean, it's based on a contract. Yes, there is a principal and a site-based has input on that, but obviously there has to be a match with a local police agency that would be willing to be under contract with that school.
Could a principal refuse to have an SRO if he wanted or she wanted to do that?
Yes.
Okay, well, you know, when I got on the board, one of the things I said I brought to this group was reality. And I know I worked for 10 years without an SRO in the building. And during that time, our assistant principals had to manage the activities that went on with schools, and especially the criminal activities. The kids would call us 5-0 because of the roles that we had to assume when there were crimes that were committed within our buildings. And there are crimes that are committed in the buildings that we have to take care of, and we had to investigate without any law enforcement training at all. And you know, if you don't think that school crimes rise to the level of crimes, you have to talk to the victims. I mean, I was one victim that had $600 worth of damage done to the hood of my car where a student keyed it. I had my office window broken out where a student broke that out from the outside, got in, stole stuff out of my office. I had an assault where I was walking away, a student threw a jar and hit me in the back and created an injury. I had the whole back window of my car broken out on the parking lot, and I had the windshield shot out with a BB gun. This all happened at school. If you don't think crimes happen at school, ask the girl whose hair was scorched on the bus where a student was sitting behind her with a lighter and tried to set it on fire. Ask the teacher who had a table turned over on her in the classroom when a student was angry. Ask the student who asked another student for Tylenol, and instead of getting Tylenol that he thought was Tylenol, which you're not supposed to really carry at school anyway, gave the student Tylenol. The other student who took the medicine wound up in the hospital having to have his stomach pumped. Now, if you don't think these are crimes, you have to talk to the victims. And I guarantee you, we had a student who was a victim of a brutal assault. They had to cart him off in an ambulance, which is not just one, but I can think of one time where they carted him off in an ambulance unconscious. We had a situation where the teacher was getting ready to take the kids to the library. The student, last one out, hesitated and stayed in the classroom to fix her books to get something ready. So the door was left open. Well, the teacher had gone on with the kids. Somebody who wasn't in class came into the room and sexually assaulted the girl. You know, these are crimes that happen. Ask the whole school. When it's reported that there's a gun in a backpack, the whole school is victimized by the fear of that. Ask the kids who are terrorized when we have trespassers come in the buildings, manage to get in the buildings, and get up to a classroom and go into a classroom that was not locked, where a class was going on, and threaten the student there. Ask the kids how they feel if that was not an example of a crime that they were watching. So, let me take a drink. My experiences inform me, and it tells me that arrests do not criminalize students. Their actions criminalize the students. SROs, before we had them, SROs, we had non-law enforcement staff trying to take care of these kinds of situations. Today, our staff is very hesitant to step in on assaults or fights because they've been disciplined and even terminated because they didn't use a proper hold. There was something wrong with the hold. And all they were trying to do is stop somebody from hurting somebody. But they didn't do it just right. So now the result of that is our staff is very fearful of losing their jobs over interfering when there is, or intervening when there's an assault or a fight. If they don't do it, and in certain buildings there are many more events like this than in other buildings. But if you're in a building where these things happen, if teachers and staff do not intervene, who will do that without the SRO? We must have that person present, because you can't wait to call Metro, because sometimes they're on other runs and they don't make a beeline to you just as soon as you make a phone call. So to me, if you have an SRO in the building and one of these things does not happen that I just read off to you, if it prevents one of these things from not happening, to me it's worth it. So I think I'm very supportive of having SROs in our buildings.
All right, further discussion? Vice Chair Wellman.
So, excuse me, as a board member, and maybe even more so as a parent of children who attended JCPS, as a person who has many, many, many friends who teach in our schools and work in our schools in other roles, what I want and what I believe every person at this board table wants is for all of our students and all of our staff members to be safe, to come to school, to be in a safe environment. For some of our students who come to our schools, school is the safest place that they are that day. And that is the bottom line, that schools have to be safe so that learning can take place. When teachers are not safe, when students are not safe, learning is not happening. Outcomes are not improving for students when there are unsafe circumstances. So I appreciate all the speakers who came, who I believe share that goal. We want every student to be safe, safe from violence from other students, safe from being handled with excessive physical force, safe from criminalization, safe from emotionally safe as well as physically safe, that's just critical for all of our schools. I think, and I appreciate one of the speakers who said we don't need to make this a bad apple discussion, you know, this is about bad SROs or bad students. I think we need to step back and take the broader view. What are the protocols? when we have people in the schools who have power over students that are not accountable to the school district, that's a problem. So I understand and I hear Ms. Duncan, I speak with people who work in our schools, I visit schools, and I know that there can be threatening situations and that there has to be safety, there has to be security, there have to be people and I know many of our SROs are very, very beloved individuals within their school communities. They are there to serve students, to form relationships, to de-escalate, to be proactive, to engage students in ways so that there isn't acting out, so that there isn't violence, and all of that is very, very, very positive. So when we have people in the schools who don't have that specific training in de-escalation, don't have the specific training, when we don't have protocols, when there's not, when an incident does take place, if there's not a safety plan to make sure that the people close to the incident themselves are not traumatized by being in the space, I just think we have to pull back and take the bigger view of what happened. Now, I know that my understanding is that what happened at J-Town is currently under investigation. I would hope that we would come out of that with an understanding of what went wrong, who was supposed to be where and wasn't. Were there enough adults in the room to make sure that everyone was safe? Were the adults who were in the room, did they have the right training to be able to handle themselves appropriately and keep themselves safe and everyone else safe? So I think those larger questions are what need to be answered, and I am eagerly awaiting recommendations about what we find from that investigation, what we have in place in every school, because if an incident can erupt in one school, it can erupt in other schools. The best way to have safe schools is to have a very clear safety plan. Everybody knows where they're supposed to be, what the protocol is, what happens. De-escalation plans when things do escalate, what happens to clear the room, make sure everyone is safe. So I hope that we can take that longer step back view to keep everyone in our schools safe so that learning can continue for all students.
Any other discussion? Member Geese?
I'd like to speak on a few issues this evening. The first issue that was first broached by our chairman, Chair Brady, as well as Member Duncan and others on the board, is the issue of civility in our discussions. I will say that I was incredibly disheartened and frankly disappointed in the behavior of some of my colleagues and the behavior of some people who attended Tuesday's meeting where we first broached the discussion on the school resource officers. The discussion that we've had today in listening to the input of the public, which we serve, has been civil. It has been a discussion that we've been able to have eloquently with one another based upon our own views in life as a retired JCPS teacher and administrator, and as other forces in the community as well. When we abandon our civility at this post, we abandon everything, and I don't take that lightly. I'm full aware of the era in which we live, an era in which yelling and cursing and screaming and stomping our feet seems to take the place of well-reasoned, rational, respectful, even-keeled discourse. I believe in this idea of civility in politics so much that I not only studied it for most of my life as a college student and graduate student, but also teach these principles daily to my students in my civics classroom, 8th graders, who have very civil discussions, I might add, about highly controversial issues. I would hope that I would never see the type of emotional, unreasonable, and grossly passionate behavior that I saw at the last board meeting, because frankly it was an embarrassment, and one that no member who commits their life to public service or to public education ought to have to endure. With that said, I would like to move on to the issue at hand, and that is the issue of our school resource officers. Each meeting, since being sworn on January the 10th of 2017, I walk through the front door and I have officers who greet me. I leave in the evening and I have officers who bid me a good evening and ensure that I make it to my car safely. And after last board meeting, when our chief security official approached members of this board, and for our own safety in the moment of disruption, put us in a room at the Van Hoos Education Center for our own safety, I was very grateful to have those men here. And I'm very grateful for their service. I'm looking at all of them now, and I can tell, based upon their actions, that they are decent and honorable men and women. And I applaud their service. Whenever an issue as contentious as this reaches the public forum, we can be assured of two things. There will be people who will scream yay, and there will be people who will scream nay. Somewhere in the middle of that argument lies the truth. It's our job as your elected officials to bring that truth and to do with that truth what is best in your interest, in the interest of our employees, but most importantly in the interest of our students. I cannot support the complete removal of SROs from any school building within Jefferson County Public Schools. I cannot. My conscience, let alone my constituency, forbade it. I have heard from a number of District 4 principals in Southwest Jefferson County who rely upon the support of their school_resource, as one member of our public so eloquently put earlier in the meeting, officer. I do know, however, that with the issues brought to our attention, there is certainly maybe, depending upon the outcome of our investigation, kernels of truth in both arguments. While I support the school resource officer community and cannot support the removal of them, I do think a more even-keeled way to approach this issue would not be to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but to see what can be improved upon in the school resource officer program. I think that would be a fair and equitable compromise, one that would achieve our aims of school safety, while also achieving our aims to ensure that students are not criminalized or treated unfairly. I believe in the idea of civic virtue. I believe in the idea of civic responsibility, and I believe in the principle of listening as an elected official. I think both sides, both from our Black Lives Matter community, it is your right as an American citizen to gather, to petition, and to protest peacefully and reasonably, as is the right of our school resource officers to gather and petition and protest and speak their minds peacefully and reasonably. I appreciate that being the decorum, the rightful and honorable decorum of this meeting this evening. And I appreciate in extending an olive branch, as I did at the close of last Tuesday's meeting as well, to every member of this board, to every member of our community, regardless of race, socioeconomic status, sexual identity, the list goes on. Let's solve the problem. I've heard the grievances. I've heard the grievances of my board members. I've heard the grievances of the constituents that I serve in Southwest Jefferson County, and I've heard a great deal of grievances today. There was one young man in particular who said, "You will never silence the voice of the voiceless." Sir, you are not voiceless, and no one here has attempted to silence you. We have attempted to listen and solve this to the best of our ability. I hope that we are able to compromise and achieve the aim of school safety, but at the same time, achieve the aim of making sure that every student who walks through the door of the most honorable building in America, a public school building, gets the shot that they deserve. Thank you, and I appreciate your support.
Any further discussion? Member Kolb?
I just have a few concluding thoughts. SROs originally got in Jefferson County Public Schools because in 2004 the federal government said, here's some money, we think you should hire SROs with it. We didn't go looking to the federal government for money for SROs. They came to us. You know, I'm a little bit concerned that some of the discussion I've heard up here essentially advocates for putting police everywhere that a crime could potentially occur. I mean, some of what I heard, you know, sounds like, you know, my son's bike might get stolen out of my garage, so therefore I need a police officer there. That's just not a reality, and I don't think that's the society that any of us want to live in. You know, I spent 11 years in JCPS as a student. My 2 kids have spent collectively 6.5 years in public schools. I think there's only 2 of us up here that currently have kids in JCPS. I think, you know, two main points to close on. One is that I hope folks realize that if it wasn't for what happened at the last meeting, we wouldn't even be having this civil discussion at this meeting. It was only that which allowed this to be possible. The other thing is I have, and I'm not going to, you know, put Dr. Polio in a position where, you know, I expect him to talk about this right now. I don't think that's a fair thing to do. But based on what I have seen from Dr. Polio responding to similar incidents with JCPS employees, I can only conclude that if this police officer was a JCPS employee, that he would have been summarily fired after this incident. Now, Dr. Polio can't do that because the SRO doesn't work for him. We, the board members, are the only ones that can show that type of leadership that Dr. Polio has shown in other circumstances to do that. And I'm pretty disappointed that it doesn't seem like we have the leadership up here to stand up for our students. Finally, you know, the question that I think that each of us has to look at is, you know, we sign the agreements with the police departments. The board does. On November 1st, 2017, we had a riot in our schools caused by the actions of a police officer. There were 2 kids in a disagreement. One of them pushed the other one. Happens every day in every high school across the nation. And about 5 seconds later, there was a fully fledged riot in one of our high schools in which a student was tased, in which other students had a taser pointed at them.
Mr.
So
Chairman.
no, excuse me, I'm talking. So the
Mr.
question
Chairman,
is, what are we
this is
going
under
to do?
investigation.
What are we going to do as a board to hold people accountable for inciting a riot in our schools? And yeah, I'm perfectly willing to hear the results of the investigation. But, you know, there's such a thing as being prudent in not, we can suspend the contract and then reinstitute it if the investigation exonerates the officers. You know, the officer didn't wait to investigate the kids when he essentially attacked one. And now these kids have 2 felony charges because of a completely routine, mundane altercation that occurred. So it is not responsible of this board to continue our contract with Jeffersontown Police Department. And you know, if I thought it would go anywhere, I'd make a motion to amend the agenda and give J-Town PD 30 days notice that your services are no longer needed. But I don't believe it'll go anywhere. And if I'm wrong, then somebody else please make that motion so I won't waste any more of our time.
Any further discussion? My comments, for whatever they're worth here, are I do believe that there are fair points to be made on both sides of this discussion. My concern is more of capacity. I think that when we have an issue where we have a school culture or even a district culture that is relying upon SROs, and I do believe that they are a resource. I think Officer Mattingly has been very well utilized within Jeffersontown High School, as well as his counterpart, Officer Garza, over at Carruthers Middle School. And I think that those officers have become very integral parts of those school cultures and communities. I do have concerns, like Dr. Kolb has, regarding the fact that there's a chain of command issue. And that was really brought into focus, I believe, a few years back, as Dr. Kolb has mentioned, with the incident with a SRO from LMPD that was very inappropriate in the way he handled a middle school student. And I've had concerns about it from that point, but let's go back to earlier this year when we originally had these contracts being discussed by the board. Dr. Kolb had brought down these contracts and wanted to discuss this item, which was a fair point. We did, and we voted for that. Dr. Kolb did not vote for it, but at the time, and I still feel that this is important, we had asked that the administration take a look at that and see if there is some other way of approaching security within our schools and possibly build a capacity to do this possibly ourselves. I think that that takes time. I don't want to unilaterally remove a capacity issue or a resource from schools without there being some type of replacement, and that replacement just doesn't exist right now because the capacity. So something to investigate as to whether or not we can do this. I will also say that this is also going to be wrapped up within pension reform to a certain degree. Just like we deal with substitute teachers that are possibly retired teachers that want to come back into the classroom, there is an issue with a pension proposal with this reform that you can only do, I think it's 100 hours of going back into a like type of, or going back into some type of state job. This is a little different than double dipping, but if there's some way that you can do that without actually affecting your original retirement, so we can utilize experienced teachers as substitute teachers, or in this case, experienced officers as school resource officers within a JCPS security team, it's something that I think that I would like to be able to utilize. But if the pension reform that's being proposed in Frankfurt goes a certain way, that's really going to tie our hands on that particular type of proposal. So I think there's a lot of things that are up in the air, not to mention the fact that we have investigations that still haven't concluded yet. And I think it's important, pardon me, I'm coming down with a cold, so please forgive me. But I think it's important that we have all the facts at our disposal as a board to be able to make those a prudent decision. Again, I think there are fair points on both sides of this argument, and I'm actually very pleased to find that our discussion now is, I think we're returning back to form. As I said, we are going to have disagreements. Disagreements are perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. If not, you'd only need one school board member and not 7 of us. So with that being said, I think unless there's any other discussion, the only thing I'd like to add is that at some point from the administration and looking at our Superintendent Polio to kind of revisit that original request that we had at the very beginning of the year to find out how we might be able to approach this particular issue in a different way. If that's additional training, renegotiating contracts, if that is developing our own security team or some hybrid thereof or something else that we're not even considering, I think that it would be beneficial for the district to be able to pursue that. That in no way is, at least from this board member's point of view, any repudiation against our current SROs, and in particular the SRO here at Jeffersontown High School. So, Dr. Foley, if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I'll be brief. First of all, obviously, I know Officer Mattingly well, wonderful educator, and obviously support him in what he said, and had the opportunity to work with 2 other very effective SROs, so support them also. Having said that, from our discussion early in the year, from when we were talking about contracts, we began as a team looking at some other districts and what they do. We have fallen behind many other districts in their work in this, and I think we really need to look at some innovative ways to approach these questions. I think we're going to see some, from the investigation, some lack of policies and procedures that clearly need to be established and talked about. I think we have increased the amount of training that we've given our SROs, but clearly we have 4 or 5 different organizations that we're working with, where many other districts our size are not doing that. So I think these are things that we're really going to have to tackle as we move forward about how we have better oversight and we train our officers. I support them and I support SROs, but I believe that we really have to look at ways that we can do those things and look to other cities, some around us and some far. We were with Oakland Unified Public School District, who has a very different model that we do, that I think we need to look to. So I'm not saying that any of those are imminent right now, but I think these are things that we have to explore and really look to in addressing these issues.
So with that, is there any other discussion regarding this item? All right. Then what I would like to ask is if there is, well, there's really nothing to receive here, so we're going to move on to our next discussion item, which is the acceptance of report on the 2017-18 Comprehensive District Improvement Planning Process. My understanding is that this is an idea or a discussion to talk about how that planning process is done, not necessarily the CDIP as it's known itself, which is going to be talked about at a later board meeting, which is not ready as of just yet. So with that in mind, I'll turn it over to Dr. Polio to introduce this item.
Thank you. Dina and Florence, don't take that personally that everyone's leaving on you. I mean, the students are the only ones staying. It's not, you always follow the difficult conversations.
I do. Yes.
Thank you. What we want to do, we are working pretty intensely on getting our CDIP ready. And when I say we, I mean Dina's office is, we're all pitching in, but they are working extremely hard to get this extensive document ready so that we can bring it to the board at our next board meeting to provide to the board members on our comprehensive district improvement plan. We also want it to be a plan that drives what we do and not just a compliance document that we send to the Kentucky Department of Education. So Dina will have a short presentation on the process, and then we will move into our next meeting providing the actual CDIP. Dina.
Right, great, thank you. Good evening. I want to take this opportunity to share with you and highlight some of the changes in the planning process this year that are coming from some new guidance from the Kentucky Department of Education that has an impact on how we develop our district plan as well as school plans. And so a few of those changes to the planning process include not only a change in the platform that schools and the districts are used to working within, but also the larger idea is to move it from a single event of turning in a plan to a multi-phase process of continuous improvement throughout the year. So it shouldn't be seen as something that is finished and put on a shelf and never looked at again. This process also allows for more flexibility so that we can really focus on our improvement efforts, as Dr. Polio mentioned, in addition to kind of moving from a compliance type of document to a continuous improvement document. And then an emphasis on key work processes that the State Department has identified in kind of framing the conversation around the impact on the student, teachers, and the learning environment. So with that, just briefly go over a comparison of the old to the new, so kind of how we used to do planning to the way we're moving to doing planning now and in the future. So, and looking at several differences or improvements in this process. One area is the goals that we're establishing. So in the previous platform, it was a very, I kind of describe it as Mad Libs, really. It's kind of a fill-in-the-blank planning template. And so this new process and structure allows for a lot more flexibility and us forming our own goals and structures. The emphasis from compliance to a continuous improvement model, due dates, January 1st, plans had always been due. They're actually still due January 1st to KDE. That's why we'll be bringing it back next time. But the idea is that it's a multi-phase process. And so we'll be bringing back the CDIP, and I know I'm going to regret saying this, but I'll go ahead and say it anyway. It's a document that we can bring back multiple times to the board throughout the year so that we can check on our progress and make adjustments and adapt as needed. Technical platform I mentioned has changed. I think the verdict is still out on that. Florence has been training on supporting all of our schools with this process, and I think there's some things that they like about the new process or the new platform, and things that they're still working on coming to understand. And then just the document itself. So it used to be that once you entered all of that information into the platform, it would produce a 150, 200-page document. And the idea here is now to really just streamline and focus on those key areas of improvement. So if you start with your needs assessment of what do we see as critical problems, and then move towards which problems do we need to fix now, and then the how. And so that is what develops into your actual improvement plan. So what you'll see when we bring back to you in a couple of weeks, so we'll bring this back, the actual plan back on December 12th, but just to give you a sneak peek of what we'll see, there are some required goals around the new state accountability model around proficiency, gap, growth, transition readiness, graduation rate. But in addition to that, we have the flexibility to add our own goals, and so we'll be adding goals around climate and culture and organizational coherence, as Dr. Polio has been focusing on all year. You'll see a much more focused plan with an emphasis on maximum impact activities. So in the past, what we would bring to you is a document that had every single strategy in the strategic plan and multiple activities around that. What we're going to be presenting this time, instead of 150 activities, it's going to be a more high-level strategic plan that has fewer strategies. And then, again, the idea that we can continue to update this throughout the year. So you'll be seeing this for the first time on December, well, you'll get it in advance of the December 12th meeting, but this is a document that we plan to bring back that will have implications for the comprehensive calendar throughout the year, the board planning calendar as well. So we're going to be including strategies that we're working on in 17-18, but also the planning strategies for the 18-19 budget priorities, so that we are starting to see that bridge and that transition to the following year. So with that, I'll end and open it up for questions.
Any questions or concerns? Member Duncan.
Dina, are we still under this system going to be setting improvement goals by drawing that line between where we are now and where our scores were last time, and to 100% proficient, so that we're still worrying about trying to set goals based on that? Or are we actually going to try and do this based on the percent that schools are able to have individuals meet their goals?
So that's a great question, and when it comes to the accountability goals that KDE is requiring, we will be using the delivery targets that KDE sets, which is that straight line model. However, this does allow us to set our own goals in different areas as well. So climate and culture goal, organizational coherence, and if schools in the district want to set additional goals around those academic indicators, we can do that as well. So for example, the goal around growth, the KDE hasn't set any delivery targets for growth because we don't have baseline data for the new model, and so we'll be that'll be left up to the district and schools at how we set our growth goals.
Question about this model. How does this improvement model factor in the fact that we have rising numbers of disadvantaged kids every year? If we're supposed to be moving upward on a line that's been drawn for us, and we have more and more disadvantaged kids entering the system, how is that factored into this model? I mean, it has to be factored in some way with resources to support the fact that we've got now to move more and more, faster and faster.
So yes, it won't necessarily be reflected in the delivery targets, but it will be reflected in the strategies around equitable access to resources. It'll be reflected in some of the budget priorities that we talked about last time for 18-19. So the other piece that I want to mention is one of the strategies that you'll see is really around those transition readiness indicators, and we've been talking about in the district kind of developing what does it mean to be ready for the next level. And while we have academic data from the accountability system, or we will have for that, but we're really talking about what are the broader than just the academic data, what are the skills and dispositions that we want students to carry with them as they move forward from one level to the next. So that will be a strategy included.
I'll just add one thing there with the goals. So one of the things is we're training schools, we're showing them the new proposed formula that KDE is thinking about for their new accountability system. So remember, the new baseline gets set 2018-19. So we're still 1 year from the new test. But the proposed model is saying that we are going to half the distance to 100% proficiency by the year 2030. So basically, if you're at 50% proficient right now, that means you want to meet a 75% proficiency by 2030. And if you divide that by 13 years, what we're hearing from schools is using this new formula, the proposed delivery targets could be much more reasonable. So instead of seeing these 20-point jumps that current delivery targets are requiring, it moves the goal line back a little bit, a few years. So now instead of 10, 20-point gains, we're looking at a range between 2 to 3-point gains. So most of our school people have said that's much more reasonable, and you can break that down by your different groups. So each group has delivery targets based on the new 18-19 data. Does that make sense?
Further discussion, Member Horn.
I'm really excited to see the new format. I think it should be really an improvement over the last one, and to see the board calendar, planning calendar.